Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar tonight. Here at Baylor College of Medicine, we take health and safety very seriously. We're in a large room tonight. There's plenty of social distancing, and so for the remainder of the talk, when someone's at the podium, they will remove their mask, but otherwise we will have our masks on. My name is Salma Nassif. I'm the Associate Program Director here for the Genetic Counseling Program at Baylor College of Medicine, and I have the extreme privilege of opening up tonight. First, you'll hear from Dan Rakonda, our Program Director, and then you'll hear from a group of panelists that include former and current genetic counseling students, as well as practicing genetic counselors at Baylor College of Medicine. Throughout tonight, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists or to Dan and myself, and you can utilize the chat function at the bottom of the screen to ask those questions. If you put a question in the chat function, it will be open to everyone else that's on this webinar, but if you have a private or direct question, please feel free to select GC Program from the drop-down menu to direct your question directly to an admissions member. With that, I welcome you to the webinar, and I welcome Dan Rakonda to the podium.
Thank you, Salma, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy evenings to attend our webinar. My name again is Dan Rakonda, the Genetic Counseling Program Director here at Baylor. And over the course of the next 20 to 25 minutes, I'm going to give you an introduction into what our program has to offer and talk a little bit more about the program application process, whether you apply to this program or others. Some of the information I hope you will find very helpful. So I think any question or an important question that might be asked by anyone contemplating applying to this program is, why would this program be one that I should include in my short list or long list of programs that I would consider applying to? With that in mind, it's worth mentioning that we are in the largest medical center in the country. The Texas Medical Center has multiple hospital clinic sites available to trainees. We get to interact with many other individuals training in other disciplines and other providers with various levels of expertise, making it one of the best areas that you might hope to learn from a variety of patient types and indications. We also are part of the School of Health Professions. That is the home for the Baylor College of Medicine Genetic Counseling Program, and we are privileged to be one of 4 programs that currently exist within health professions. We have a physician assistant program that is currently ranked as the number 3 program within the country and the number 1 program within the state of Texas. We have a DNP program that for the past 2 years has been ranked as the number 2 program for nurse practitioner training, and we have an orthotics and prosthetics program, and currently there are no rankings for ONP programs, but they actually are unique in that they have a combined didactic and clinical training. In fact, all other programs have only the didactic component, and then after graduation, individuals have to solicit and obtain their own clinical training separately. So in fact, with the combined program, graduates here are able to graduate 6 months earlier and complete their training 6 months earlier than other programs offering ONP training. Now, obviously, you're not here to learn about the ONP, PA, or DNP program. You're here to learn about the BCM Genetic Counseling Program. Other attributes that really help to set us apart, at least in our minds, and hopefully we can entice you to believe the same when we are done with this presentation. We are fortunate enough to have one of the largest, if not the largest, medical genetics departments in the country, with over 160 faculty members that include 45 genetic counselors and others in both clinical and research areas. And for the past 9 years, Baylor College of Medicine has been number 1 ranked in genetics-related grant funding from NIH. And because of all of the other associated facilities, including the Baylor Genetics Laboratory, we have direct access to cutting-edge research and cutting-edge clinical testing services. So as many of you likely have done your own homework, but just to review, we are now a profession that exceeds 5,000 individuals. And looking at the U.S. News and World Reports and the growth field that we are currently in, as well as the Bureau of Labor and Statistics information, this is one of the fastest growing professions in healthcare and in all other disciplines, with an anticipated growth rate of 29% over the course of a 10-year window listed here on the slide. That essentially suggests that if you include both clinical and research and other areas, this is likely to be an underestimate of the actual number of providers that are going to be needed to meet the demand. And since 2006, the number of providers has been increased by over 85%. This map is not all-inclusive, but now there are 53 programs. Programs in Canada are not listed here, and as we try to keep pace with the number of new programs, we are a relatively young program. We graduated our first cohort of students this year, and we are fortunate to be able to say that of our graduates who have now sat for the board exam, all of them have passed the board exam. One of them is waiting until February to take the exam, and based on the performance of those that have taken it, we're hopeful that we will continue with that pass rate and move forward with future classes as well. It's worth mentioning that our mission as a training program allows certain advantages that may not be available at other programs, and part of that is translated into how we've defined our mission. Our mission essentially says we will provide students with a transformative education in genomic medicine and the practice of genetic counseling. The outstanding clinical laboratory and research faculty will empower our graduates to be empathic professionals that utilize critical and effective thinking skills. On top of that, our vision is to see our graduates become part of genomic medicine in the broader world and serve as indispensable navigators of genetic service delivery. So with that being said, take a few moments to give you a little bit of an overview of what our curriculum currently looks like. In the first semester, there is 15 credits of courses that you would be taking. One of the courses which I have the privilege of teaching is the Foundations of Genetic Counseling 1 course, which is a 4-credit course, meets twice a week for 2 hours, gives you, as the title might suggest, foundational knowledge and introduction to the genetic counseling theory and practice. We also have a medical genetics course that is a 2-semester course, the first of which is in the fall of year 1, a 3-credit course that has something of a hybrid delivery process. It includes real-time synchronous learning and asynchronous learning with videotape, and then workshops to review information that's covered in the asynchronous and the didactic components of live lecture as well. We also have embryology course that is also taken with medical students, and the asterisk on this slide refers to those courses that have other learners. In the medical genetics course, we have fellows and residents that also take the same course as the genetic counselors. And then another interdisciplinary course is the health behavioral counseling course, which includes students from the PA program, the O&P program, and the genetic counseling program. And this is a course that teaches about motivational interviewing, which is very relevant to the type of care that genetic counselors hope to provide in practice. We also have a Preparing for Genetic Counseling in Practice that allows the information that's learned in the classroom to be taught in more of a hands-on fashion. And Salma Nassef, our Associate Program Director, is the director for that course, the co-director for that course. And we also have a Research Methods in Genetic Counseling that Sarah Scalan, one of our research genetic counselors, facilitates and teaches to introduce you to research methods and prepare you for the eventual thesis project that you would be expected to complete before your graduation. We also have a journal club that spans all 4 semesters. The first journal club allows you to begin critical review of research and published literature, both on the clinical and research side, and present that information in ways that would facilitate your skills in communication and understanding of the published literature. And then lastly, unlike some programs, we actually introduce you very early into the clinical milieu, which essentially means within a few weeks of arriving on campus, you are already in observation mode under supervision of physicians and genetic counselors in various settings. You get initial exposure to help you connect the dots with what you're learning in the classroom, and the feedback we've gotten from our students suggests that this is something that they find to be very helpful, useful, and informative to them. After that first semester, the didactic load is a bit heavier in the second. This is the most heavy didactic load in the entire curriculum. 19 credits are offered, including a continuation of the foundations of genetic counseling, taking a deeper dive into some of the fundamental components of what you do as a practitioner. Medical Genetics 2, continuing the detailed description and learning of clinical genetics across the continuum of medical care, whether that's prenatal, pediatric, adult, cancer, and all other types of service you might be engaged in. We also introduce you to medical ethics in 2 different courses. One is a medical ethics course with PA, O&P, and physician trainees, as well as genetic counselors, a 2-credit course. And in advance of that course, the first part of the spring semester, Sarah Huguenard, one of our faculty members, teaches a course that's specific to human genetics and genetic counseling related encounters and endeavors from an ethical perspective. We also begin our second joint course. I should mention that the Journal Club is joint between first and second year students, while the psychosocial practicum in the spring also is first and second year students, so that learners are learning from their peers and their fellow trainees across different classes. We also have a fundamentals in epidemiology and a epidemiology and population genetics class. So there's a 2-credit course and a 1-credit course in sequence that are taught by 2 of our epidemiologists that are affiliated with our program. And they do a great job of introducing some of the biostatistics and facilitating the learners that are also beginning to develop their thesis projects even before the spring semester. In fact, Thesis 1 is the time in which the project ideas are submitted for approval, and they are able to get the green light for submission for IRB approval if and when IRB approval is required. It also facilitates the furthering of research understanding and expectations with regard to what your research project will look like as a master's degree thesis program. This will give you the tools that you need to be successful. As I mentioned, the Journal Club spans all 4 semesters, so you are continuing to go through the literature with students participating in selecting articles and utilizing that information to learn from one another and to better understand how to critically review literature. We also begin to go from an observational clinical rotation to an engagement clinical rotation, where the students are beginning to take on roles, and the expectation is that by the time you have completed your spring semester, you are well set on your way to being able to function under supervision a complete session, such that you are also set for the summer session where you may be on a remote or local rotation, potentially, hopefully, being able to engage in complete sessions as a major part of what you're doing over the summer. By the time you graduate, you'll typically have well over 200 cases, so there is no limit of cases available for you to obtain and meet the criteria that the ACGC and the ABGC require, which is a minimum of 50 cases that contain enough logbook roles for you to be successful. We also have at the very end of the spring semester a laboratory course. It's a 1-week course with faculty from Baylor Genetics Laboratory, a laboratory that's been cutting edge with regard to the development of technologies that we all have become very familiar with, specifically things like CMA, chromosomal microarray. It really started at Baylor. Exome sequencing, genome sequencing. Many of the technologies that are now being used across the country were really developed here at Baylor, and they were also involved in the Human Genome Project and the sequencing of the first human genome. The clinical rotation over the summer is a 4-week rotation, a 5-week rotation that an individual has that can be on-site or can be off-site and even international, depending on the needs, desires, and availability of different sites. As you can imagine, with COVID-19, there have been some adaptations that have needed to be made that led to us being able to accommodate and adapt in spite of the restrictions on travel, the restrictions on social distancing, and other factors that may have more negatively impacted other programs. I think we were perhaps better suited to tolerate and respond in ways that did not disrupt the educational opportunities that are available here at Baylor. We then move on to the fall. The 13 credits in the fall semester include Advanced Genetic Counseling 1, where I have the privilege of being the primary faculty member teaching, but we get guest lecturers on specialty topics. For example, next week, one of the things that we found was very helpful is we're doing mock interviews and or other preparation for job search. And we do that at this stage because it's really right about now that individuals start to be thinking about that, and opportunities for recruitment and job search begin to take on more importance and greater availability. We also have a unique course, the Variant Interpretation and Counseling course, that's offered through the Baylor Genetics Laboratory. And this is a course that allows you to better understand the process of classification of variants, the technology behind variant interpretation, and how to translate that from the laboratory to the clinic and to the patient. And then we continue with Journal Club. Moving forward, this is the second-year students class that's with the first-year students in Journal Club 1. And then lastly, in the clinical rotations, all of the students are now actively engaged in primary roles, gathering additional cases, getting in prenatal, pediatric, and adult and cancer settings. And then as we prepare for the last and final semester of the 22 months in which you would be engaged with our program, we have Advanced Genetic Counseling 2, Thesis 3, where individuals are completing their thesis projects, getting ready to defend their thesis, and ultimately, this past year we did a virtual defense of thesis, and that wound up going very well. We hope to be in person in future years, but time will tell depending on what circumstances allow. We also have a continuation of the psychosocial practicum in the spring, and Journal Club in its last incarnation, and lastly the clinical rotations, which allow for elective rotations, as well as if by chance someone needs remediation, there are also opportunities for that available. We have not had any attrition during the course of our program, and we hope to continue that and make sure that all of our students are in fact successful in their endeavors in their training. This is a pictorial, if you will, a representation of the clinical sites that are part of the Baylor family. It includes sites both locally here in the medical center, the TMC, as well as San Antonio. We also have virtual clinics which use telehealth and telemedicine. The Consultagene Clinic is one of those. That's also been a fairly significant transition in all of the clinical areas, so that we are now able to do in-person, remote, combination thereof, depending on the clinic setting, giving you the opportunity to have those skills to be able to use them when you graduate and move out into the clinical and or research world. This is a pictorial of the map of the TMC with some of the sites that are available for engagement. Although we recommend individuals have transportation that allow them to travel to and from the various clinical sites, many of them are very local, and there is transportation and shuttles available for some of the clinical sites as well. We are fortunate in that we have a diverse population, both in geography and in background. We have 8 students that are in our second year class, and this year we expanded to 9 students in our first year class. We anticipate 9 students will be engaged with us for the next incoming class, and beyond that we have plans to expand the program further. Alluded to this a little bit earlier about where our summer rotations were, and I'm listing the 2019 because of the COVID impact on summer rotations. All of them were local this past summer, but last year we had individuals across various communities in the U.S. and individuals internationally as well. We also feel that the pipeline of development requires additional efforts that we are fortunate to be able to offer here at Baylor. And again, because of COVID, we did not follow through on our 4 internships that we had planned for this past summer. But just to review what we have done and what we anticipate doing for 2021, we received 59 applications in 2019 and 79 applications that were initiated in that year to select two individuals that would have access to an 8 to 10 week rotation with immersion, opportunities for a research project. We realized that doing that for only 1 or 2 individuals limited our ability to reach more, so we reduced the length to 4 weeks and now have 4 internships that we anticipate having. There is still a stipend that also helps for those that may be coming from out of town to offset costs of travel and housing during their time here. So we are one of only a few programs across the country that offer an internship with stipend funding. The main goals are to assist in making candidates that may already be good candidates may be more competitive than they would be otherwise. We want individuals that have already made a choice towards their career. So if it's someone that's kind of dabbling in genetic counseling or not sure what they want to do, this may not be the right place for you to apply. This would be for those individuals that have likely already developed certain skills and expectations and plan to apply to a program in the future, and this would certainly help their cause in making those applications. They have the ability to attend weekly conferences, journal clubs, and also the possibility of doing a small, short research project as well. So how do you get into Baylor? What is the process that's involved? Undergraduate degree is required. There is no specific preference as to what that degree needs to be. It does not need to be medical. We do require the official transcripts, but during the application process, we review the unofficial transcripts. A minimum GPA of 3.0 is expected. We have chosen to continue to use the GRE this year, although that is being evaluated on an annual basis to see whether or not that is perhaps a barrier for some to have access into graduate level education. We do require 3 letters of recommendation. We also expect a personal statement, and those are very critical. The personal statement often tells us your journey, your history and story, what brought you to the point of wanting to be a genetic counselor. And also part of our requirement is to submit a CV with resume and to have advocacy experience. And that ultimately gives you kind of a view into some of the things that we as genetic counselors are often engaged in as helpers of individuals, families who may be in crisis, who may be in complicated, unexpected situations, and how to respond to them in a compassionate and empathic way. So if you are looking to become a genetic counselor, there are some things you may do that will make you a more competitive applicant. We certainly encourage individuals to meet with, either in person or now virtually, practicing genetic counselors to get a sense for what the job is like for them, to get a sense for what practice areas you might be interested in. Obviously, shadowing would be ideal, but given the current circumstances, that's often more difficult to obtain. That does not mean if you don't have shadowing or direct in-person experiences that we are going to treat that negatively. We realize, given the circumstances, that we're going to need to look at our applicants from a more holistic perspective and recognize there may be barriers and limits to being able to access some of the things that others may have been able to access in the past. If you have research or lab experience, that's certainly a helpful thing for you to have. And ultimately, applying to an internship like the one we offer or others that may be available elsewhere is certainly helpful to you as well. As you prepare for applications, our application window opened on September 1st. It will close on December 31st at midnight. If an individual completes and submits an application, we will then review that application in the months of January and February, and in mid to late February begin to offer invitations for interview. We were able to adapt very quickly this past spring, to virtual interviews, and for all intensive purposes, you can even ask some of the panelists when we get there momentarily what their thoughts and experiences were with regard to the interview process. We hope to do in person, but we recognize that we may not be able to. And we've also found that that may increase in our accessibility for individuals that might otherwise have difficulty travel or may have limited funds. We want to make sure that we're able to offer positions and interviews to individuals, then that financial barriers are minimized as best as possible. Once the interview process is completed, by the end of April, we will submit our rank list. You will submit your rank list to the NMS, and ultimately you would have an opportunity to determine whether you would be enrolled in and matriculated in the fall of 2021. During the interview process, you will wind up meeting with myself, with Salma Nassef, the Associate Program Director. If it is not in person, we will have a virtual tour. We did that last spring. Interviews will take place with faculty and current students as well. There will also be presentations on the curriculum, financial aid, student services. If in person, breakfast and lunch would be provided. And we would encourage you to be prepared. Do your homework about the institutions that you might be interviewing at. Know who you might be interviewing and know a little bit about the institution, because that shows you are committed and eager to learn about the places that might be your home for 2 years as a graduate student. So as we think about when we're going to do our interviews, we have not formally announced and confirmed what the dates will be, but again, those will likely be late February, March, and perhaps early April. And as I said, you will have the opportunity to meet with faculty and current students. The NMS is the universal requirement for all programs that are now participating in the match, and as of now, all 53 programs are participants in the National Matching Service match process. It is recommended that if you are planning on completing and submitting an application, that you have your NMS number no later than December 15th. That would allow for you to complete your application at whatever institutes you've decided to apply. And then once those application windows close, other programs may close their windows a little earlier or later than ours. Most, if not all, will be closed by mid-January, if not end of January, the latest. You will then have your opportunity to rank the programs that you've interviewed with. Programs will rank the students or the prospective students, and then the window for submission of your rank list will be March 31st, and then shortly thereafter, within 2 weeks, the programs will be able to submit their rank list. The deadline for the rank list is 2 weeks later, and then the release of results is 9 days later on April 23rd. So with that, in closing, provide you with the information to contact us at the Genetic Counseling Program, both by email, by phone, by mail, and also let you know the email contacts for myself, for Salma, and for the program if you wish to communicate with us after the webinar is over or at any other time in the future. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton back over to Salma, and it's been my pleasure, and we hope to meet you all in person in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for sharing some of the overview of the program. So now we're going to transition into the Q&A portion of tonight's programming. Just as a reminder, you can always use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions to the large group or directly to the GC program. So today we have 5 individuals here with us. They've assembled at the front of our room here, all socially distanced. And I'm going to start off by doing some introductions. So I'll ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, give us your name, what your affiliation is with the program, and where you're currently working now.
I'll begin. My name is Rachel Thomas. I'm a graduate of the inaugural class of the Baylor program, and I am currently a prenatal genetic counselor at Texas Children's Hospital Pavilion for Women.
Hi, I'm Ash Burns. I'm a practicing genetic counselor with the Adult Genetics Service at Baylor College of Medicine. I did not graduate from here because I graduated a year before the inaugural class, so it wasn't an option for me to apply.
Hi, my name is Malia Bowder. I'm a first-year student and also the class president for the class of 2022.
Hi, my name is Brianna Cadalzo, and I'm also a first-year student here.
Hi, I am Ashley Spector, and I'm currently a second-year student here.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. So our first question for tonight is, can you please tell us a little bit about what it's like, why you're interested, what drove you to pursue genetic counseling, and then maybe what drove you, if you applied or are a student at Baylor, to come to Baylor? Go ahead, anyone that wants to answer.
So I discovered genetic counseling in the footnote of a textbook, but upon further research, I realized it's something that I wanted to pursue. What drove me to Baylor in particular was that it was in the Texas Medical Center, which I was really impressed by all of the opportunities here. And in addition, I was impressed by the leadership and the genetic counselors we get to work with every day. And so that's what brought me here.
So I learned about genetic counseling when I was a junior in college from one of my genetics professors. I knew I liked science and I knew I liked people, but I didn't want to do research and I didn't want to give up science, so I was kind of stuck for a while. But when I heard about genetic counseling, I knew it was going to be the perfect blend between my two passions there. For Baylor specifically, I was really excited about the prospect of training in such a diverse area. The Houston area is just really unique in terms of its diversity, both in language and ethnicity and religion, and I really wanted to be a genetic counselor who could properly interact with my patients no matter what background they were from.
And I didn't find out about genetic counseling until after I graduated college, but I knew I liked genetics. I was a bio major, and from Google, I'd heard about genetic counseling for the first time. And so I went on to work at a clinical genetics lab to get some exposure to the field and make sure that this was what I wanted to pursue. And from there, working very closely with genetic counselors, lab directors, physicians, all sorts of types of professionals in the genetics realm, I fell in love with genetic counseling, and it seemed similar to what has been iterated already, a perfect blend of my love for science and people, and I'm really excited to be in a field that is changing so rapidly, and I really look forward to the lifelong learning that comes along with genetic counseling. And I chose Baylor specifically because, again, of the enormous amounts of opportunity here. With it being the largest medical center and genetics department in the country, there's no shortage of specialty clinics or research projects, and with the lab as well, there's a lot of opportunities on the industry side to gain exposure.
So I had a slightly different journey. I actually first heard about genetic counseling when I was in high school and was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And then I got to college and decided that I wanted to be a researcher. So I went to a PhD program in biochemistry. And probably within my first year, I realized, no, this isn't for me. But I kept at it for another 3 years and then went, now what I like about this job is not doing the research, it's telling people about my research and educating them about science. What can I do that's more like that? And then light bulb went off. I remembered hearing about genetic counseling, so I left that program and started applying, got into a program, and when I was looking for jobs, found out about the opportunity at Baylor, and like everyone else was attracted to being at such a large medical center and at such a prestigious institution, and was really happy that I got to work with students at the new program.
Thank you all. A question for our practicing genetic counselors. Can you describe what a day in the life looks like? So what do you do from a day-to-day basis?
I just got that switched off. So for me, it really depends on the day. On a typical clinic day, I'll be working with our geneticists, helping them see patients, either collecting family histories if we weren't able to get in touch with the patient ahead of time, or coming in to explain test results, testing options, how to coordinate testing. On my non-clinic days, I'm making calls out to patients to collect family history, follow up on testing, or talking with my coworkers on any pending follow-up. So it's been interesting moving more remotely. I spend way more time on the phone than I ever used to, but everyone's easy to get a hold of and works well together. So.
I think my days are very similar, except for the difference in being in a more prenatal environment as opposed to adult is, in addition to all of those things, we're also interacting with other healthcare professionals rather than just geneticists, so ultrasound techs, nurses, individuals like that who help us and definitely are one of the benefits of working in a collaborative environment. We also have meetings that we go to each week or so, whether that's with the department or with someone else. And then we also have the opportunity, being in a large medical center and academic institution, we have the opportunities to go to lectures and talks given by healthcare professionals we work with.
Thank you very much. Our next question is focused on research. So as part of a genetic counseling program, there's a research component or a thesis component. So maybe primarily for Ashley, if you could tell us a little bit about what your research topic is, and then for our other current students, if you can tell us what you've been brainstorming in terms of your upcoming thesis work.
Yeah, so I was definitely intimidated by research coming into grad school. I won't lie, that wasn't a strength on my resume coming in. But I very naturally found a question through the health behavioral counseling course that Dan mentioned earlier, focusing on motivational interviewing and how that applies to genetic counseling specifically in its utility in practice. So though I was intimidated by research and maybe the statistical analysis, I was able to find a qualitative research study that I've been very fulfilled by doing so far and have enjoyed the process. Incredibly supported by the program from day one and teaching the foundations of research and helping to make this project hopefully publishable in the near future.
So as a first year, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my project, but I have felt very supported, just like Ashley said. Sarah, who teaches our research methods course, has been incredibly helpful in identifying different projects that are already going on that we might be able to hop onto, having presentations from people who want to be involved with a genetic counseling thesis project, and so there's no shortage of different routes to take. For me personally, I'm fluent in Spanish and I'm really interested in the Spanish-speaking patient population. As I mentioned earlier, Houston is really diverse, and so for my project, I'd like to take advantage of that diversity, and so I'm kind of looking at use of interpreters in healthcare and genetic counseling specifically, and maybe patient satisfaction with that, or patient access to genetic counseling as Spanish-speaking patients. So somewhere along those lines, we'll see.
And throughout the brainstorming process for me, I am really interested in like undiagnosed rare disease. So with Baylor being a part of one of the sites for the Undiagnosed Diseases Network, or UDN. That was a huge draw for coming to this program. So I'm brainstorming some ideas, working with them. And there's also, of course, other projects going on with undiagnosed disease here. So I'm talking to a few other researchers involved with those and possibly looking at utility of new testing methodologies like whole genome sequencing or RNA sequencing.
Thank you. And on that note, with one of the unique aspects being the Undiagnosed Disease Network, another unique aspect of TMC and the Baylor program is the amount of specialty clinics we have. So a question from the audience is, can you tell us more about the specialty clinics or diversity in the clinical rotations and options?
Sure, so I can begin and you guys can also touch on this as well as you're currently going through all of these options. But there are three main categories for clinical rotation. There's prenatal, adult, and pediatrics. And within each, or mainly within pediatrics, there are different specialty sites. Now, some of these clinics meet once a week. Other of these clinics meet less often, more like once a month. But there is ample opportunity to participate in these clinics and work with the genetic counselors that run them. And I don't know if you guys would like to, now that you're going through it, talk more about these clinics, maybe some that you have the opportunity to have gone through.
Yeah, I can touch on it. And I know Rachel mentioned the specialty clinics within pediatrics, and there are plenty. I picked my roommate up from the cleft clinic today, or craniofacial clinic, and she was telling me about all the cool patients she saw and what a unique experience that was. I also think on my adult rotation right now, there's a EDS clinic that I'm able to spend a lot of time with. I do think something that's quite unique about Baylor is they focus on adult genetics, not just cancer genetics. I think there is so much to explore in adult genetic diseases besides hereditary cancer, so seeing some of those adult specialty clinics have been a great opportunity as well.
Thank you. For many people, choosing to come to the Baylor program means moving to Houston. So can we talk a little bit about what life in Houston is like, especially life as a grad student?
talk about moving from the Pacific Northwest. I don't know how many people are from the West Coast, but it is a big difference, I would say. I knew that coming into this, and so I was prepared to not like it as much maybe as home. But it's really been great. It's a little bit harder now that everything is closed because of COVID, but I live right across from Herman Park, and it's huge. There's so much to get out and see outdoors, which is fantastic, especially in the evenings when it cools down a little bit. There's the zoo, and there's the Memorial Gardens, and it's just beautiful. So that's how I've been spending most of my time. And not to mention, the food here is great. So that's mainly what I've been doing with my roommates, is getting food from a different restaurant every night, and it's all been amazing. So I've been adjusting well.
And I'm originally from the Atlanta area, but moved down here from Boston, and I was very excited to get back to a warmer climate, and I'm really enjoying fall no longer meaning a puffy winter coat. And of course, with the pandemic, moving to Houston at this time has been very interesting because there's a lot that is shut down at the moment, but I am thankful for the weather being really lovely because the outdoor opportunities are vast. I live right near Malia, so I'm in Herman Park all the time, and I go for runs on the bayou, things like that. And right now we are kind of dreaming of possible weekend trips we could take in the Houston area if the conditions improve to either Austin or Galveston.
Thank you, guys. For our practicing genetic counselors, the next question is for you. What is your favorite part of your job?
I feel like I shouldn't answer this question first since I'm more new, but I guess you'll have more experience to add to this after. My favorite part of my job as a practicing genetic counselor is just being able to be there with someone through such a vulnerable time and being able to help them understand something. I think genetics is very hard and complex, and not everyone has, the access to the resources we do to understand it, and so it can seem pretty scary. I really like being there to help my patients and talk them through it and give them the resources that they need and just to be an asset for them.
Okay, I'm really upset now that I have to follow that because that was a great answer. I'm going to build on it a little bit because for me, instantly what I thought of about my favorite part of the job is the people. I love the patients I get to work with. And while I was in training, I actually loved working with adults because adults with genetic issues, I think, have some really unique, I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's something about talking to someone who is going through something and trying to piece together what might be an environmental or lifestyle factor compared to a genetic that I found really interesting. So I love working with my patients, but I also love working with my team. I work with physicians, medical assistants, other genetic counselors, and it's really a collaborative process, and I feel like even though we're not all working in the same place right now, it's actually made our team closer. We're meeting and talking more often, and it's been really great just getting to know them all.
Thank you both. The next two questions are for the students on the panel. So the first question is, what kind of support is there at Baylor? Is there a mentor program or other support systems in place?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most standout parts about Baylor. Again, I moved here from Florida, so intimidated by picking up my life and taking it somewhere. I think automatically we were given a second-year mentor as well as a faculty mentor, so that was someone right off the bat to kind of ask our questions to take us out to lunch, to talk to. But the mentorship I got and still got from the class of 20 is incredible. They're such great friends and role models, and now to give that hopefully to the class of 2022 is a great gift. Just no competitive spirit amongst my classmates, I think, are some of my greatest mentors, but I would be remiss if I do not mention the faculty. Dan is my thesis chair, and we get to spend so much time together. I was just talking with my classmates the other day about how it's so incredible that he is so involved in all of our projects and applying to jobs and everything, and that support with happiness in his heart, obviously, and as well from Salma and all our faculty members. So incredible mentorship and one of the standout things about Baylor, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Ashley said. I felt supported here from day one, and that was one of the biggest draws for me to Baylor was a lot of other programs did have mentorship pairings, but it was either with a faculty member or with a second-year student, but not with both. And I really felt like I wanted that kind of support in my life, and it's just worked out great. And Dan and Salma are constantly checking in. I was going through a bit of a stressful time a couple weeks ago, and Salma was texting me to make sure I was okay during class, and so it's just been incredible.
I'll say one of my favorite parts of the job are the students, so it's really lovely to hear that. We had a question about the scholarships, grants provided by the program, and we are in the process of putting those together and establishing and looking for opportunities for funding for scholarships. There is more information about the financial piece of the program on the website, so I encourage you to go to our website, which is bcm.edu/GCP, and you'll find a financial tab there that will link you to that information. The next question that we have is about opportunities for student involvement within Baylor or within the Texas Medical Center. Can y'all talk about some of the leadership opportunities that might be available?
I can speak a little bit as being the class president. I've been involved in a couple of different panels and committee meetings so far. I'm still pretty new to the job, so I don't know every single detail about it, but it's been really neat. I've been able to meet with other class presidents within the School of Health Professions and also within Baylor as a whole. So being able to speak for some of my classmates and make sure that we are well represented within the school has been really valuable and fulfilling. So if you're interested in things like that, I would say definitely go for it. There are a lot of really cool opportunities here, and even if you're not a class president, there are lots of places that you can serve. I know that the diversity, inclusion, and equity, I think is what it's called. They have student representatives, and so there's a niche for everyone.
Great. And what about extracurricular activities? Are there other outside of, the program or your day-to-day work life, things that you can be involved in to connect with the genetics community, maybe at large?
So I can speak on that. During, I guess, the second half of my first year and the first half of my second year, I was able to do the Public Health Precision Medicine Roles Fellowship through the National Society of Genetic Counselors. So there are multiple different opportunities that you can pursue just outside of the Baylor genetics realm, and that's one of the options that's available, and I really enjoy it. I recommend it if you have an interest in public health. But I do know that there are other types of extracurricular activities you can do with other healthcare professions or students from other healthcare professions. One example is one of my classmates, Emily, was in an a cappella group with physicians and physician assistants and many people from the medical community. And so that's a way that she was able to meet other individuals who are in the healthcare profession, but also do something that she loves and enjoys.
I can also add, there are opportunities that may be less committing, things like Evening with Genetics, where it's actually intended for patients, but where they have genetic counselors or geneticists speak to the community, and we are always welcome to attend that, as well as great opportunities to attend grand rounds. That's become even easier with Zoom. You don't need to be there at 7 in the morning, but I think that's, as well as multidisciplinary conferences, I think those are something that really are so wonderful at Baylor, being within such a large medical community. We get access to a lot of those opportunities that we're constantly getting emails on a week-to-week basis with the grand round schedule and everything, and which we are always encouraged to attend.
For the students on this committee, oh, Brianna, did you want to add something?
I was just going to add, I've taken on an event coordinator role for the first years, and so on a less academic side for extracurriculars, I've been organizing socially distanced, safe activities for us outdoors. Like we did a picnic in Herman Park, and we are going to be doing a corn maze and pumpkin patch activity in the coming weeks. So there are activities that are non-academic that we enjoy doing together as well. We also just did a scavenger hunt in Herman Park organized by our faculty mentors, and that was a really fun way to see more parts of Herman Park that I had not previously seen, which is surprising.
Thank you. So for the students on the panel today, or former students, can you tell us what your favorite class was at Baylor and why?
I don't want to offend anybody. We have some instructors in this room, but I think my favorite class right now is the research methods in genetic counseling. Designing research studies has been a passion of mine for multiple years, and I get really excited about different areas of unconscious bias and like how you can reduce that in statistical analysis, and just having all of that information presented in a way that's super relevant to genetic counseling is very exciting.
Yeah, I think I am a little bit biased because my thesis project is motivational interviewing, but the health behavioral counseling course was incredible. I think the psychosocial aspect of genetic counseling is something that really sets us apart from other health professionals, and I feel like we've been well supported in that at this program. Also, as a second year, I'm in the variant interpretation class, which I just feel like is very unique and giving me a perspective I didn't even know I needed, but really empowering me to be the best advocate for my patients and fully understand their test report. So I'm really enjoying that as well.
So I think my favorite course was the psychosocial course that the second years and first years have together. So it's a really cool opportunity to be able to learn alongside people who are at different places in their journey through grad school. And it's a place of no judgment. So it's a great course where you get to talk about psychosocial situations, which are situations that, might affect some of your patients that you interact with in the future. And you get to plan how you might communicate with your patient and how best to help them. So it was a really useful tool, and I find myself using a lot of the lessons I learned in that class now in my job.
Thank you. The next question goes back to Rachel and Ash. So thinking about after graduation and getting ready for the boards, Ash, can you first give us kind of just a general overview of how any grad program will help you and prepare you for that? And then Rachel, if you could speak to how the Baylor program specifically prepared you for your boards.
Yeah, I'm happy to get started. So at least with my experience, we had a lot of tools that we were able to take with us during my training. So a lot of the coursework is laying some of the foundation for taking and hopefully passing your boards. So they actually worked on essentially giving us the tools that we then could bring with us, whether if it was like a bunch of PowerPoint slides where each slide is a different condition and some fast facts, or an Excel table, again, breaking things down that way, mock boards, questions. So things that I had available for myself while I was studying. And then it was also great being a genetic counselor here with other students that I was had with me in clinic, because we'd be seeing an indication that was similar to something that I knew I needed to study for boards, so that I was training the student, but it was also helping me study as well. So kind of cheated a little, double dipped.
So with Baylor, as Dan mentioned earlier, there are 2 courses that Dan teaches, so Foundations of Genetic Counseling and Advanced Genetic Counseling. We have lectures in these courses where we do talk about boards and some resources that are available to you, and even breaking down, what topics and types of questions might be on boards. I feel like other things that helped me prepare were one, doing a study group with my classmates. We made regular times to meet. But most of all, I think the most important thing is that at the beginning of studying for boards, I went back and I reviewed my notes from all of our curriculum at Baylor, and it was the biggest confidence boost because I felt so prepared. After I reviewed my notes, I realized that Baylor the curriculum is comprehensive, and it does prepare you, and it does give you the tools that you need. It's a great foundation. So that was very reassuring, and as Dan said earlier, 7 of us have taken the exam so far, and all 7 of us have passed.
Kudos to you guys. And then the very last question to close out the night. So if you will just leave our audience with what makes Baylor unique, what do you think, in your own opinion, makes this the program to apply to and the program to come to?
I would say that one of the biggest draws is how new the program is. And I know that might sound counterintuitive to some people, but if you like having your voice heard and having your feedback taken seriously, this is the program for you. I was really excited to be at such a new program because there's so much opportunity to work so closely with the faculty and the program leadership and really have your ideas heard so that maybe we can help future students, and just being able to be involved in that is really exciting, and they really do take our feedback seriously.
Yes, I was going to say exactly what Malia said. Besides everything that we've already kind of touched on, I was going to say the collaboration, or the how the students are able to provide feedback has been a really cool part of being at Baylor. And the second years, or the first and second years, I guess, when I was interviewing, had talked about this when they did their informational session the night before the actual interview. And they had shared how they enjoyed being able to kind of make a difference in the program and have their voices heard. And our feedback is taken very seriously, and like there's been, and these adjustments are being made not just for the benefits of future classes, but also for our own. Like, for example, in our medical genetics class, we were taking our quizzes at the end of class, but we preferred to take the quizzes right at the beginning while all of our studying was still fresh on our minds. And so within a week, by the time we had our next quiz, it was switched to be in the beginning.
Yeah, I think there's so many things. It's impossible to choose one, but I think something that hasn't been touched on is how lovely the interdisciplinary courses have been. I think more so, especially when we got to be in person, but really collaborating with these, whether it's a genetics fellow or resident or PA student or OMP student, and also educating them about the genetic counseling profession, but learning alongside them. I've made good friendships as well, and I think it's just been a great benefit, and then, yeah, it's been really nice to have those interdisciplinary classes.
I think everything said so far, I echo those statements, but also, the opportunity for growth. The supervision here, the chances to be involved in interests that you have. Dan and Salma and everyone else in the faculty, they really make it happen. So I think looking back on my time here, I feel like I've grown a lot, and if I had known, before how much I would grow, that would have been the selling point right up front. So that would be my answer, the growth and the opportunity.
And then I guess I'll conclude. One of the things that I love about my job, and that I think that if I had the opportunity as a student to come here, is just the diversity of patients and cases that you would have to see, because it's such a large medical center and a large genetics department. And not even just in clinic, but the breadth of research opportunities and exposure to lab and industry. I think it's a really well-situated institution and program to essentially allow any student to get the foundations, but then create their own curriculum based off of their interests. So,
And I said it was impossible to choose one, so I'm going to add another. But I was just thinking of how lovely it is to also have been introduced to clinics so early. I know that the pandemic was unprecedented and hopefully won't happen again, but I remember when that hit and there was maybe a week or two when we were adapting to virtual, I really was not worried, because even at that point in the beginning of my second semester, I felt like I had already independently led majority of a session. And I knew that if my clinic was wiped out for the rest of the semester, I could still go into my summer rotation confidently. And I think, again, that's not what they were planning for, but I think it just goes to show that confidence and skill that comes with being in clinic. I think it was like week 2, so I really do appreciate that about this program.
Wonderful. With that, we'll thank all of our panelists for joining us tonight and spending your evening with us talking about the Baylor program. And that concludes our webinar for tonight. As a reminder, if you didn't have a question that was answered directly, you can email us at geneticcounseling@bcm.edu. You will also receive a survey in the coming days with some questions about how you found the webinar and other topics that you'd like to see presented. So thank you again for joining us this evening, and we hope to see an application to the Baylor program soon.